Before starting, I just want to point out that if you saw my update video last month, then you may know that I was considering starting a Patreon account. Well, recently, I finally made one. Don't feel obliged to donate, it's not necessary, but it does encourage me to try and make more videos more often, seeing I do want to make YouTube and Twitch a secondary source of income within the next couple of years. It will help me get better equipment as well as validate spending the necessary time to research, write, and edit them. Either way, I'm still gonna do it, but the extra push does encourage me to do it more often. If you just want to do a one-time donation though, you can do that through the PayPal link in the description. Okay, I'm done with the shameless self-promoting. On with the video. What is a Mary Sue? Well, to put it bluntly, it's a slang term for marijuana. You see, it all started... Wait, what? I'm getting it mixed up with Mary Jane? So does that make the girl from those Spider-Man comics the physical embodiment of weed?
What's this? A joint?
So, apparently a Mary Sue is not marijuana related, but is instead an idealized character in fiction. The person is practically perfect in every way. The most common, or at the very least most popular, gender for Mary Sues are female, but that doesn't mean men are immune to the trope and are generally called Marty Stews or Gary Stews. But for the sake of simplicity, and so I don't confuse my grammar as much, I'll use the more popular female term unless I'm talking about individual Gary Stews because I'm lazy and I confuse myself all the time. And if you don't believe me, then refer back to just a minute ago because that joke about me confusing the two Mary terms wasn't just a cringy joke, but also was based on my real reaction when I found out I spent literal years of my teenage life thinking Mary Sues were weed references. High school was a rough time for this snake, but Mary Sues are characters that basically have zero flaws. They have no real struggle in life, and if they did, it's something they can easily overcome because they're just that good at every single thing they put their minds to. The term Mary Sue seemingly originated back in a 1973 Star Trek fanfiction because of course it started in a fanfic, and it stars the half-Vulcan, half-human OC Lieutenant Mary Sue on her journey aboard the Enterprise. She's a 15-and-a-half-year-old girl who is immediately hit on by Captain Kirk. FBI, open up! Saves the entire fleet in a noble sacrifice and impressed the entire crew enough with her beauty, intelligence, and selflessness to win several awards including the Nobel Peace Prize and to have her birthday celebrated as a national holiday. Now, if that sounds a bit extreme, that's because it's meant to be. The author of the fanfiction, Paula Smith, intentionally wrote it in such a cringy way because it was intended to be a parody of the rising popularity of similar yet meant to be taken seriously fanfics within the Star Trek fandom in the early 1970s. I mean, the title is literally called A Trekkie's Tale. Given this context, it's pretty funny to be honest, and it'll be linked to the description if you're interested. Now, I don't have a problem with fanfictions in general. If you think I'm going to talk down about them as a whole, then I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I'm not. It's okay to write them, and for beginning writers, making a fanfiction is an easy starting place to practice honing your skills. Just try to avoid making your OC so overpowered and flawless that even the most Mary Sue-like characters would call them out for being one. I'm looking at you, Chris Chan and Sonichu.
Electric Hedgehog power! Pew!
But this fanfic, A Trekkie's Tale, parody though it may be, is important because it brought to light the popular character trope that is typically used to lazily write characters that are so overpowered or so intelligent or so frickin' hot that everyone can't help but love them and admire them. It's something that's not restricted to the cringy corners of fandoms and fanfictions, however. Mary Sues are pretty popular in all forms of entertainment. Isn't that great? The character type is found in all forms of entertainment, ranging from books to TV to movies to video games. Popular ones that people seem to talk about and argue on whether or not they are Mary Sues include Caulifla from Dragon Ball Super, Alice from the Resident Evil movies, Superman from, well, Superman, and Rey from the Star Wars sequels. But others that are less talked about in comparison these days include Kirito from Sword Art Online, Bella from Twilight, Korra from Legend of Korra, some interpretations of James Bond, Mary Poppins, Jason and Kimberly from Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, and Wesley from Star Trek The Next Generation.
Sir, I know this may finish me as an acting ensign, but...
Shut up, Wesley!
But are all of these characters I mentioned Mary Sues? Sure, many are overpowered and super hot, but not all of them fit the trope as well as others. In fact, arguments can be made for most of them on whether or not they are, and it makes for interesting discussions. Though for the sake of time, I'll just talk about two of the more popular ones because I like getting views, and I'll probably have said popular Mary Sues in both the thumbnail and the hashtags, so I need to spend the most time talking about them. Though if you want me to make a part 2 and discuss some of the other characters I listed, then let me know. If there's enough people wanting me to make it, I will. But back on topic, some people will say Superman is a Gary Stu because he has a strong moral compass compass to do the right thing, he's loved by almost everyone, and he is one of the most powerful fictional characters in history. But detractors will say he's not because he struggled when he started growing into his powers and had to train to control them. His likability is a reason why characters such as Lex Luthor despises him, and just having a strong moral compass and wanting to do the right thing isn't really a characteristic of a Mary Sue. The DC universe doesn't revolve around Superman, and other heroes can accomplish impossible tasks without the Kryptonian Boy Scouts' help. For this character, there's a strong case for both sides here. Most of the evidence given are valid points as to whether or not Superman is a Gary Stu. On the other hand, there aren't nearly as many good points against the argument of Ray being a Mary Sue. Some people will say Ray is not a Mary Sue because she had to learn how ship parts work to better sell them as a scavenger, so that's why she knew more about the Millennium Falcon than Han Solo. She struggles with finding out who her parents were, and when finding out they were nobody, she refused to believe it at first. However, the evidence for the side claiming Ray is a Mary Sue is pretty overwhelming and more obvious than the counter-arguments. She is able to learn advanced techniques of the Force almost immediately. She has no real characteristic flaw, as the whole who is Rey's parents idea is just a mere mention, and as of The Last Jedi, not a big part of her character. She's good at everything and every character loves her, even the villains. Wait, what?
Ben, when we touched hands, I saw your future. Just the shape of it, but solid and clear.
Like I said earlier, arguments can be made on whether or not any of the characters I listed are Mary Sues, but my question is this: is it bad to like them? Is it bad for writers to make Mary Sues? Personally, I think it's okay to like them, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing for writers to make them. Writer! Hear me out on this. Let's talk about the second part of the question first. Is it bad for writers to make a Mary Sue? Well, in my opinion, it depends on how they're written, just like any other character. I mean, let's face it. If you take a character and give them flaws and struggles, but the story around them is still poorly written, then it's still a badly written story about someone people won't care about because their story is so horrendous. It's the same with Mary Sues, but in my opinion, you haven't had a struggle with making a near-perfect character because that makes them less relatable to the audience. Sure, some people will like seeing impossible characters for a quick power trip fantasy or something like that. But if there isn't anything interesting or unique about the character, then there's a big risk of them being boring, and it would be very hard to convince people to get invested in your story if your lead character is bland. Let's take Rey for example. In The Force Awakens, yes, she does clearly have many of the qualities a Mary Sue has, so for the sake of argument, let's just say she is one. However, there was a bit of a mystery behind some of these aspects that made her character intriguing. Why did she hear Obi-Wan when she touched Anakin's lightsaber? Why did the Force call out to her in that moment? This mystery made her near-automatic mastery of Force techniques an interesting talking point as people theorized the meaning behind all this. How Rey's powers were written gave fans a lot of material for theories on what it could possibly be that made her so powerful. But then The Last Jedi messed it up!
I've soiled the good
Star Wars
name! Soiled it! Soiled it! Soiled it!
Compare how Rey was written in The Force Awakens with The Last Jedi. Sure, she still is seemingly more intelligent than almost everyone and can still learn strong Force techniques within minutes, but in The Last Jedi, the mystery behind her Force powers was carelessly explained by Snoke. As Kylo Ren got strong on the dark side, the light side automatically made Rey strong so she can be his rival. That is the lamest explanation for superpowers I've ever heard in a popular franchise. It's even worse than the reasoning as to why the monster in the 1998 American Godzilla movie is male despite laying hundreds of eggs in Madison Square Garden.
He's pregnant.
He is?
He. A very unusual he.
But my argument for Mary Sues is the same for any character in a given form of entertainment. If the writing is good, and you make your character interesting, then more people will like them. The writing for Rey in The Force Awakens may not have been the best, but it at least had a layer of mystery in there that made her character intriguing. To me at least. The writing in The Last Jedi, however, made her character boring and even more Mary Sue-ish. Is that even a word? Mary Sue-ish? Well, it is now. But the quality of the writing matters, especially if your lead character is a Mary Sue. Make a person interesting or funny, or give them some sort of mystery behind their amazing talents. There are ways to make a Mary Sue a good character. For example, let's assume the arguments I presented for Superman being a Gary Stu are correct. That assumption doesn't take away the fact that there have been amazing stories revolving around the Man of Steel told by fantastic writers and brought to life by great artists and animators. Superman has been popular for over 75 years for a reason, and I think it's because they made him such an interesting character. I mean, sure, some of his stories are dumb. You're gonna have that with that long of a lifespan in media. But there are great stories featuring Superman, and it's those stories that make the Man of Steel so well liked by many fans of the superhero genre as a whole. And that leads me to the other part of my question. Is it okay to like Mary Sue's? Well, to be honest about my personal opinion, yes. Just like it's okay to hate them, it's also okay to like them. Don't let people judge you for who you like in any form of entertainment. You like Rey even in The Last Jedi? I personally find her boring in that movie, and to me she doesn't really compare with other brilliant female Jedi in both Legends and the main canon, but it's cool if you think she's great. Nothing wrong with liking her for whatever reason. I personally don't care for a lot of Mary Sue's, but there are a couple I do like. I think Superman is cool, and I'll admit I initially liked Rey in The Force Awakens. The writing for her in The Last Jedi kinda ruined it.
Soiled it! Soiled it!
But again, if you like her in that movie, then that's fine. And also, because I like repeating myself apparently, if you want me to make a part 2 and talk about other Mary Sue's and my thoughts on them, let me know. But anyway, I'm gonna get going. I'm Snek, thank you for watching, and I'll see y'all later.